Hello, what I'm going to show you today is how to sow some lettuce. Now I've got a variety of lettuce here which can be sown much earlier than the rest of the other varieties that I usually come across. This variety is called Tan, and you can sow it directly outside if you want between January and July. I am not going to sow it directly outside because I have a feeling that the birds might nick half the seeds. So it's now early February and I'm actually going to start it in the greenhouse. Now when you are sowing lettuces, what you want to do is you want to sow them successionally. So you want to sow a few seeds in, say if you get this variety in January, then sow a few more at the beginning of February, and then a few more March, and so on and so forth until you can't, it's too hot and you can't sow anymore or you've run out. The problem with lettuce is if you sow a load of it in one go, you just can't eat it all, because once it's ready, then quite quickly will it then go to seed, and once it starts to go to seed, you know when it's going to seed, because instead of having the nice compact lettuce that you have, it will suddenly start to grow up. Now once it starts to grow up, then the lettuce itself gets very bitter and is not very tasty at all, and the only thing you can do is to get rid of any of the ones that have started to go to seed and stick them in the compost heap. So it doesn't freeze either. Lettuce goes hideous and limp and brown and disgusting and very watery. So lettuce is something that you have to pick and eat. So it's always best to sow just a few bits the beginning of every month or the middle of every month, but do it every 4 weeks, and then you should have a constant supply all the way throughout the summer and into the autumn. Now some lettuce you can then let them get big and just pull up the entire plant. What I tend to do, and I prefer to do, is to have a line and just pick the leaves as and when I want them. I tend to find that if you do that, you can harvest the leaves when they're smaller, and therefore the plant will actually last slightly longer, but it's entirely up to you. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to sow this variety. As I say, they're called Tan. I sowed them last year and they did really well. So let me show you how I'm going to sow mine. So here I've got a tray. I've only filled one half of it because I'll sow something else in the other half. And I've just put some multi-purpose compost in the tray, in the section that I'm going to sow. Just gently pat it down with the back of your hand like this, and if your compost is very dry, then I would suggest you give it a little water now. My compost is quite wet, so I'm not going to give it a water, otherwise the compost will get too wet, and then when the seeds touch it, then they may well start to rot. So I'll give it a couple of days before I water. So all we're going to do is I'm going to put some of these seeds into my hand, and then I will just sprinkle them onto the compost. How many have we got in there? I don't know, might manage to get a few more. Now before you sow the seeds, if you have had to put some water on the top, make sure that the water has drained all the way through and you don't have any lying water up here. So once all the water's gone down, all you need to do is to just sprinkle your lettuce seeds all over the top of the compost. The best way to do this is just to pick some in between your thumb and your finger, and then just move your thumb and your finger backwards and forwards, and they will fall out onto the compost. If there are any very close together or touching, don't worry about that, because when we prick these out, we will prick them out into clumps rather than individually, Now I think I'm going to get all of that because there's not much left in here. I do have more other different varieties of lettuce seeds. So, oh actually there's more in there than I thought, but never mind. There we go. So yes, I've got other varieties of lettuce seeds, so I will be sowing those later on in the year. I think they're due to go in about March. So there they all are. I think that's about it. Just double check. Oh look, there's always a couple hiding every time. So all I'm going to do now is on top of the seeds, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of compost, just like this. And just make sure that you cover all of the seeds. Just level it off, you don't need to pat it down, because we want to make it easy for the seeds to come through. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to label these and then they will be finished. Well, here are my lettuce seeds. I've put a label in them and they're all ready now. Now I am going to, because these have been sitting just for a little while and the sun started to come out, so it's now got a little bit dry on top. So what I will do is I will give them a very quick water. Remember that when you are sowing fresh seeds, you know, tiny little baby seeds, you need to use water that has come straight from the tap. Once your seedlings have started to grow and you then put them into, say, 3-inch pots or out into the ground, then you need, or you can use water from a butt. But to start with, when they are brand new and you've just sowed your seeds, then use water straight from the tap. That is, unless of course you're doing blueberries, because blueberry plants need rainwater, but as a general rule that's what you need to do. So hopefully these lettuce seeds will start to come up in about a week's time maybe. The temperature has started to go up a little bit, so I think what I will do is, if the temperature at night is going to be too cold, I will come out and I will put a propagator lid over the top of them. But during the day, if it's like it is today, then or it's turning out to be now, then I will just leave them without a propagator lid on top. Well, I hope that you're growing lettuces this year. There are so many different varieties for you to try, and they are absolutely wonderful. They are so easy to grow and you really do get an awful lot out of them. Well, I hope you found that useful and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.